In the heart of a forgotten American town, shrouded in the mist of endless autumn, stood an old boarding house. Its facade, once radiant with the laughter of travelers and the warmth of home, was now weathered and cloaked in shadow. The sign above the door, Maple Hollow Boarding House, creaked in the wind, as if whispering warnings to those who dared approach. Locals avoided the street after dusk, and children spun tales of the place, calling it cursed, haunted, or worse. But for those who didn't believe in ghosts, it was just another relic of a bygone era, until the night that changed everything. It began with a young woman named Emily Carter, a journalist from Boston, drawn to the town by rumors of strange disappearances and chilling legends. She arrived on a gray October evening, suitcase in hand, determined to uncover the truth behind the stories. The taxi driver, a grizzled man with wary eyes, hesitated as he pulled up in front of the boarding house. "You sure you want to stay here?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Emily smiled, brushing off his concern. "I'm not afraid of ghost stories," she replied, stepping out into the biting wind. The boarding house loomed before her, its windows dark and its door slightly ajar. Emily pushed it open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old wood. The foyer was dimly lit by a single bulb, flickering overhead. At the reception desk sat an elderly woman, her face pale and her eyes sunken, as if she hadn't slept in years. "Welcome," the woman rasped, her voice echoing through the empty halls. "You must be Emily. I've been expecting you." Emily hesitated, unsettled by the woman's knowing gaze, but forced a polite smile. "Thank you. I have a reservation." The woman slid a tarnished key across the counter. "Room 7, top of the stairs, end of the hall. Breakfast is at dawn. Don't wander after midnight." Emily nodded, her curiosity piqued. She climbed the creaking staircase, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The hall was lined with faded portraits, their eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. At the end of the corridor, she found her room. The door groaned as she opened it, revealing a small, sparsely furnished space. The bed was neatly made, but the air was cold, and the window rattled in its frame. As night fell, Emily unpacked her belongings, setting her notebook and camera on the desk. She planned to interview the townspeople in the morning, but for now, she settled into bed, determined to get some rest. Outside, the wind howled, and the branches of the old maple trees scraped against the glass. At midnight, Emily was awakened by a sound, a faint rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on wood. She sat up, heart pounding, and listened. The sound seemed to come from the hallway. Ignoring the old woman's warning, Emily grabbed her flashlight and crept to the door. She opened it slowly, peering into the darkness. The hall was empty, but the tapping continued, now louder, more insistent. It echoed from the far end of the corridor, near the grand staircase. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she followed the noise, her footsteps muffled by the threadbare carpet. The portraits on the walls seemed to leer at her, their painted eyes glinting in the dim light. The tapping led her to a door she hadn't noticed before, half hidden behind a faded tapestry. The door was old, its wood splintered and warped. Emily reached out, her hand trembling, and turned the knob. The door swung open with a shudder, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, Emily descended the stairs, her flashlight beam trembling. The air grew colder with each step, and the silence was oppressive. At the bottom, she found herself in a long, narrow corridor lined with doors. The tapping had stopped, replaced by a low, guttural whisper that seemed to seep from the walls. Emily's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the peeling wallpaper. She tried the first door, but it was locked. The second, too. At the third, her hand brushed against something cold, a rusty doorknob. She turned it and the door creaked open. Inside was a small room, empty except for a single chair and a cracked mirror. Emily stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. As she approached the mirror, her reflection flickered, distorting into a pale, hollow-eyed figure. Emily gasped, stumbling back, but the figure remained, staring at her with a mournful expression. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, plunging the room into darkness. Emily's flashlight died, and she was left alone, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispering grew louder, filling her ears with words she couldn't understand. She felt a cold hand brush against her cheek, and she screamed, pounding on the door. Moments later, the door burst open, and Emily tumbled into the corridor. She scrambled to her feet, heart racing, and fled up the stairs, not daring to look back. When she reached her room, she locked the door and collapsed on the bed, trembling. The next morning, Emily awoke to sunlight streaming through the window. She tried to convince herself it had been a nightmare, but the cold dread lingered. She dressed quickly and made her way to the dining room, where the old woman awaited her. "Did you sleep well?" the woman asked, her tone laced with irony. Emily hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I heard strange noises last night. I found a door in the hall leading to a basement." The woman's eyes narrowed. "There is no basement in this house." Emily frowned. "But I was there. I saw—" She stopped, remembering the figure in the mirror. The woman leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Some doors should never be opened, Miss Carter. The house remembers. It keeps secrets." Emily shivered, her appetite gone. She decided to explore the town, hoping to find answers. The townspeople were wary, their eyes darting away when she mentioned the boarding house. One elderly man hunched over a cane finally spoke. "Maple Hollow was built on cursed ground," he said, his voice trembling. "Long ago, a family disappeared, vanished without a trace. Some say their spirits haunt the house, trapped by their own grief and rage. No one who stays there leaves unchanged." Emily pressed for details, but the man shook his head, unwilling to say more. Undeterred, she returned to the house, determined to uncover its secrets. That evening, she searched the halls for the hidden door, but found only blank walls. The tapestry was gone, replaced by smooth, unblemished plaster. Frustrated, Emily returned to her room. As night fell, the air grew heavy and the shadows deepened. She tried to sleep but was plagued by nightmares, visions of pale faces, twisted in agony, reaching out to her from the darkness. At midnight, the tapping returned, louder than before. Emily sat up, clutching her flashlight. This time the sound came from inside her room. She turned, heart pounding, to see the closet door slowly creaking open. A chill swept over her as a figure emerged. A woman, her face gaunt and eyes hollow, dressed in tattered clothes. She glided across the room, her feet barely touching the floor. Emily froze, unable to move or scream. The ghostly woman stopped at the foot of the bed, her lips moving soundlessly. Emily strained to hear, and a single word echoed in her mind. "Help." Summoning her courage, Emily whispered, "What do you want?" The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she pointed to the floor. Emily followed her gaze, noticing a loose floorboard near the window. As the apparition faded, Emily rushed to the spot and pried up the board. Beneath it, she found a bundle of old letters, yellowed with age and tied with a faded ribbon. She read the letters by the light of her flashlight. They told the story of the family who once lived in the house, a mother, father, and young daughter. The letters spoke of happiness, then fear, as strange events plagued the family. The final letter ended abruptly, with a desperate plea for help. Emily realized the spirits were trapped, unable to move on because their story had never been told. She resolved to write their tale, to give voice to their suffering and bring them peace. As she finished reading, the room grew colder, and the air shimmered. The ghostly woman appeared once more, her expression softer, her eyes grateful. She nodded, and a sense of calm washed over Emily. The next morning, Emily packed her things and prepared to leave. As she descended the stairs, the old woman at the desk smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her face. "Thank you, Miss Carter," she said quietly. "You've given them what they needed." Emily nodded, understanding at last. She stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the weight of the house lifting from her shoulders. As she walked away, she glanced back at Maple Hollow. The windows, once dark and foreboding, now glowed with gentle light. Emily returned to Boston and published her story, sharing the truth of Maple Hollow with the world. The boarding house was eventually restored, its curse broken, and life returned to the old town. But some nights, when the wind howls and the shadows grow long, travelers still hear faint whispers echoing from Maple Hollow. A reminder that some stories never truly end, and some spirits linger, waiting for someone to listen. For those who dare to seek the truth, the house remains, its doors open to the curious and the brave. But remember, some doors should never be opened, and some secrets are best left undisturbed. In the heart of Maple Hollow, the past is never far behind, and the line between the living and the dead is thinner than you think. As Emily learned, the most terrifying ghosts are not the ones that haunt old houses, but the memories and regrets that linger in the darkness, waiting for the light of understanding to set them free. And so, the legend of the haunted boarding house endures, a chilling reminder that some places remember, and some stories refuse to be forgotten.